Welcome to the Smokin Word. Welcome to the Smokin Word.
What's up, everybody? Before we start this podcast, I want to announce those shows. As you heard, we are back, and so is Hardcore. Madball, Death Before Dishonor, and Cruel Hand. We will be playing Friday, June 25th in Hamden, Connecticut. Saturday, June 26th, Hampton Beach, New Hampshire. Sunday, June 27th. Let me tell you, I got a lot of history in Reading, Pennsylvania, Club Reverb. Everybody, get those tickets now if you haven't. It's going to be a party. We're ready to celebrate, and you should be there to celebrate with us. And the Smokin Word podcast is always brought to you by CasaDeRock.com. That's my merch store. You want to support the podcast? We got t-shirts for $21. We got shorts. We're waiting to drop a whole new summer collection, so stay tuned for that. And all t-shirts, $21 for 2021. You know how we doing it. And big shout out to my Patreon family out there. We growing every day, and because of you, we're making this thing happen. We got a lot of things in the work. We've been working hard, a lot of new edits. I know we've been waiting, but we're going to be dropping a lot of stuff, my Patreon fam, so stay tuned. And if anybody out there, you want to fucking invest in the show, patreon.com/the Smokin Word. That's how you keep this show going. Nothing's for free, but we don't expect nothing for nothing. We give you something for something, and you get the best time killing material out there. But anyway, if you want to keep the show going, if you want to show some love and you want to invest in the show, we got 4 tiers on Patreon. Again, patreon.com/the Smokin Word podcast. Shout out to all my patrons out there. You know who you are. Mad love. We out here. We're growing. You motherfuckers are making it happen. Mad love. And everybody out there, follow me at Hoya Rock 357 on Instagram, and make sure to add the Smokin Word podcast on Instagram. All right. You could hit us up there. If you got any questions, any new music, you can send us there. You know, you send it to there. We read the mail and all that good shit. And yeah, make sure to hit us up on there, and make sure to subscribe. Listen, I know I was one of those motherfuckers guilty of not subscribing and not thinking it mattered, but it matters. It gets our podcast in the mix with everybody else's when they see a lot of action. So hit that subscribe. Make sure you fucking hit the stars, leave a comment, or whatever you got to do to make some noise online for the Smokin Word podcast. But shout out to everybody around the world. We feel the love. This is a worldwide family. We know you out there. And the microphones might sound a little different. We had a little technical difficulties, but you know how we get down. We weren't going to let another weekend pass, you know, so we making it happen anyway. So we're going to be getting things in the works in the future, but we making it happen. But this week, my guest, this is going to be a cool one, because we toured back in the day a long time ago. And since then, he got to do a lot of cool things and big things we're going to bullshit about. But the voice behind Refused, an old friend, tour dog, Sweden's finest, Dennis from Refused. Let's set this shit off. Yeah. Technology working.
Yeah.
How you been? Let me ask you before we go, how you say your last name?
I mean, we'll do the English version, which is Lyxzén.
Lyxzén. All right, now give me the real Swedish version.
Lyxzén.
Lyxzén. Oh, I like that one better.
All right.
It sounds like a Game of Thrones character, you see? Now everybody, right? Now your name is real popular, right? How you been?
I've been pretty, just trying to hang in there.
I know this whole shit is crazy. I ain't seen you in a while. I remember the last time I saw you was somewhere in Europe when you were, I think, Noise Conspiracy, right? International, right? With that band, right?
No. We met briefly at some festival somewhere where I think we played Refused, and you guys played with Hazen Street.
Yeah, was it Refused? Because I would
I-
probably, yeah, you would remember, but that was the one where I saw you last. Yeah.
That's a long time ago.
Yeah, no, it's crazy because it's funny because I'm like, oh yeah, I got to see Dennis, yeah, and then now that's fucking a bunch of years ago now.
Yeah. But I mean, it's interesting as you grow older, your perspective on time changes so much. You're just like, oh, that was yesterday, and now so I'm like, no, it's 4 years ago. I'm like,
I know that shit goes fast now. It sucks, right? It's so fast now. And fucking no, but what's the deal? Like so I hate going into this COVID shit, but you're in Sweden right now?
Yep.
And so how's been your experience till now, like in general, just how's it been over there? I know because Sweden was the one, if anything, people were looking at Sweden at one point like, oh shit, Sweden got it going on. Like, or it was the best place on earth, which it is in a lot of ways,
It's
but you know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, it's been an interesting year. If just looking at the way we handle it, I mean, there's something in our constitution that says you can't do lockdown, which the rest of the world just kind of did lockdowns. And in Sweden was like, well, we recommend you to stay at home, but you don't have to.
Yeah.
So it was a weird thing because it's like, I think looking at the pandemic and everything that went down, I think we need another year or two to be able to look back and say, that was a good strategy. That was not so good,
Gotcha.
So, but I think, I mean, it's been a weird year. I think Sweden's handled it okay.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's trial and error, No one's dealt with anything like this before. So it's like people are just like, how do we figure it out? And
exactly. Everybody, there's no book on this, and everybody's like, exactly. We all had ups and downs, because I'm in Florida now. And Florida in America was looked at like Sweden was looked at as the world at one part. Is the best place, then not. Then yes, it is. And it is funny how, we see it juggling, but it's, exactly. Nobody knows what, and trial by fire, and learning as we go.
Yeah. And as I said, I think it will take some time to actually assess like what was the right approach. And I mean, I think we got to be prepared for stuff like this happening in the future. So I think it's good to have like a way like, this is how we sorted it out. I mean, I've had friends that had it really bad, like as far as like going, I mean, in America and in Germany, like Italy, where they had real lockdowns, and it was like really bad. And I mean, Sweden got bad, but it never got really bad. And I live in the north of Sweden still, and it was never really bad up here. So it was a weird situation where you were like, there's this social distancing thing going on. And there's this like, I mean, for me, I could kind of choose to isolate myself a little bit. But then a lot of day-to-day life just kept on going. I mean, my partner, she just kept working as normal. And so it's been a really strange year where it's also been like some stuff get to be open. Oh, you play music. Oh, that's completely shut down. Like anything with that entertainment, that's completely shut down. So
let me tell you, you might as well be living in Florida, because Florida, where I live, is exactly what I've been experiencing, what you just said. Like, regular life was going. When you go when we over here to go shopping, you wear a mask, but it's everybody doing it. There's people jogging in the streets, riding the bikes, going to work. And then it's like, but we've lucky to be in the places we are, where other places are getting it kind of black and white, very boom, hammered on heads.
So how you been dealing with the whole pandemic? What have you been up to? I mean, it's been a year now.
Yeah, it's crazy like this. Well, basically, I had this podcast like 5 years ago, early on, but it was harder. Back then, I had my sound man, you know how it is. They got to help me with everything. And I was like, the minute I would go home, I would deal with time changes with editing, trying to get in touch with them. It was just a pain in the ass, but I loved doing it. And then I kind of fell off on it. Long story short, when we were about to go hit the road, the lockdown happened on Wednesday. That Thursday, we had tickets to fly out to a European tour. Crazy. And horrible. And then okay, everybody got hit, so I was like, okay, it sucks, but everybody got hit, you know what I mean? So it felt a little better that everybody was suffering with me. Yep. So you know what I mean? You know what I mean? But I was like, yeah, but then I said, okay, what do we got to do? We got to keep the brand alive. If it's figuring out like how bands started doing live streams or whatever, I was like, now's my time. My sons had to do school through Zoom. And I said, so I go, wow, Zoom. And then I started seeing TV shows saying, oh, we're doing interviews through Zoom. And I go, hey, my sons use that. And then I said, wait a minute, this is an app, technology, and that's how I realized I'm getting old. I was like, wow, it does it all. And then boom, I said, I've been wanting to relaunch the podcast. And I said, what better time than to help keep our music scene alive? Not just me, but you know what I mean? Yeah. Keep the word out for all our bands. Also, our band and be productive. Yeah. And then I started, doing it and helped me stay focused because this shit was driving me crazy.
I hear you. Yeah. I mean, I think for me, it was we were on tour when everything went down. Refused was touring the state.
Oh, that's what I was going to say. So you were on the road.
In February, March. So the last couple of shows on the West Coast, which is like, oh, it's a sold-out show in LA, but the room's not full. We're like, what the hell's going on? Because in tour, you're in this bubble. The tour.
Of course, you don't know what's going on. Yeah.
You're like, I heard something about a virus. But then you're like, yeah, whatever. It's,
I know. I was saying the same shit.
Yeah. So I was in LA. I played the last show in LA and I flew home. And the day I landed in Sweden, the world shut down. So I was like one day from like if our tour would have been like 3 days longer,
Yeah.
So we came home and the world shut down. And I mean, you know how it was in the early weeks and months. Everyone's like, well, this will be a couple of weeks, a couple of months, So I got really productive. I did yoga every day. I was super focused. And then the summer came and everything kind of slows down a little bit. And then, we had this whole year of shows booked, we refused. And then, so in March, we're like, well, might have to cancel the May shows. And then, all right, now we have to cancel the summer festivals. And then you're in the middle of the summer, you're like, oh, we're canceling the fall. So when the fall came, it was just like, you're like, well, it's really hard to stay motivated, really hard to stay focused because you had a couple months of like, yeah, you just fucking pull through and work hard. And then you're like, oh, this is bullshit.
Oh,
this
yeah.
Forever, So,
I know. It snowballed. Exactly. Like, people were gearing up. It sucks. Every year bands are gearing up, but it felt like this year, like you're one of a bunch of bands that literally were like, if they weren't gearing up for a new tour or an important tour, they were dropping an album or something important and it all got shelved.
Yeah. It was super weird. But then, I mean, we got to deal with it the best way we can. And I mean, for me, it was important just to stay, stay alive is a bit hyperbolic, but just stay focused and stay afloat, like how do you keep your mental health together because I mean, for you and me, I mean, playing live music is a huge part of what defines us as people.
Yes.
And then for someone to tell you like the thing that defines you, that your identity, you can't do that. Like for a full year, you got to stop doing it. And what that does to you existentially is super weird because it's like, well, I am this person that tours. I am this person that plays 50 to 100 shows every year. I travel across the world every year. And all of a sudden, I mean,
now you can't be you
this much since I was like a teenager, So it's pretty wild what that does to your psyche. You're like, what? Who am I now?
Exactly. It's funny that you're saying this, and I'm not surprised because we're the same boat. I literally said the exact same thing you said to my friend yesterday, because I go, yeah, and one day they expect you to say, okay, you can't be you no more. And I go, people don't understand, like, it's more than just a band for us. We grew up. This is like it's a part of us. I know it is for you, for us, for, everything we've got in our life was because of this. And, we got to us to get our own therapy through this thing. We know what we have, or else we wouldn't survive this long doing it. And then one day something happens where they say you can no longer be yourself. And I try to tell people, I go, you don't understand. It's more than just playing music. You know, our whole lives revolve around this. Everybody we know, everything we do revolves. Either we met them through music, it's in between a tour, or we talk to them and, he owns a restaurant. Next time we come back from the road, we're going to go to that restaurant. You know, you plan around the road, around records. It hit us hard, everybody in music world.
Because it's not only, and I mean, a lot of people are like, I mean, you know, you can talk about the financial aspect of having a full year of touring canceled, because you know what that means. Like, you know what it means when you have a touring year set up where you have 30 European festivals.
Yes.
You know, that's like, you know what that is.
It's a punch in the, I feel it right now. Believe me, I'm feeling it for you guys.
Yeah. But I mean, that's a part of like, that's horrible. But the mental, as we're talking about, like the mental aspect of like not being, because I mean, I'm the type of cat, and I think you are too. I would play shows for free just to be able to play shows. I just want to play music. So it's not about the money, but I mean, this is what we do for a living. So it's like, it's this thing where like, the financial aspect of it is horrible, but the aspect of, as you said, we can't be who we're supposed to be. Or, you know, that's even worse. I mean,
I fell through that. I fell in a hole because of this COVID shit. Also, I saw, you know, in the beginning of this, I had lost my mother to cancer, not to COVID, but obviously that was hard. I'm a single father, you know, obviously, you know, but whatever, that's everybody's problem. But definitely all that happening, and then now no work, you know, or not knowing when work, same thing happened with me. Like, I was a guy that I've been through so much crazy stuff. I was like, nothing could faze me. Like, all right, I'll get over it kind of shit. Till I found myself in my room for 2 months, you know, with bags under my eyes, people telling me come out of your room. And they were like, where basically anxiety took over because of all this, being home, not knowing what to do. I tell people, let me just break it down in a simple way for myself and for Freddie. I could just say this: in 26 years, we haven't been off a stage this long. Yeah. So now you tell us exactly. I could just say that. So it feels weird.
Yeah. And I mean, it's interesting too, because it's like, for me, and I'm sure for you as well, like growing up and feeling kind of like a freak, and then discovering music. And as you said, you have this outlet, this therapy where you're like, I can get out all these like negative emotions, but also the beautiful things about life and through music, and you can sort of direct all that anxiety or whatever. And then all of a sudden you can't do that anymore. I mean, mental health issues is a huge deal with musicians and artists, because it's a very demanding occupation. Because as you said, like a lot of times we live hand to mouth. It's like always like, you got to do that tour, and then I'll DJ over here, and we'll put out that record, and then, you know, so you already have that pressure, and you already have a world that's telling you like, oh, you get to do your hobby for a living. You should be grateful.
Exactly.
And you're like, well, you know, it is a work, you know. Yeah. And then add that like with a full year and a half of COVID, and you're like, how it affects your mental health. And I mean, I've been lucky. I have a great partner. I've been creative. I do my yoga. I got stuff that kind of keeps me balanced. But for a lot of people, it's super hard to find that balance. You know?
We're human. And I try to tell people exactly kind of on what you're saying. I always say, musicians, I go, you know, we're flipped. If you took us, we're flipped inside out, right? Now you're telling us we got to flip ourselves inside out and now. And now I'm like, no, that's why we love the music, because it lets us be who we are. Yeah. You know, that's again, we show our insides through our music. Now you're telling us we can't show, you know, we can't let our soul out, however, whatever it is. And it's like, well, you know, a body lives because it's soul. You don't want us to even live inside. People don't, you know, when I used to see the Doors and see he was all mystical because of whatever. Well, half of it was mushrooms and acid, but you know, and then half of it was fantasy, but there's reality to that fantasy way. I get it now. Like, it's deeper. Like when you're in the music, like how we are and we live it, and it's that much a part of us, it really becomes like an organ in your body. Like you need it to work with everything. and it's so hard to explain to people that don't get it. Like,
and I mean, to be for me, like I was an awkward kid growing up. I was a bit of a loner and a weirdo. And I always felt like, like a lot of times because of the lives we live and the people we are, you're a bit out of step with the world, because we're doing our own thing and we're kind of like existing on the margins of society in music. Like when I'm on stage in that, like that hour and that moment, that's the one time where I feel fully comfortable with myself. Yeah. And that's a beautiful thing. I mean, you're talking about like, there's a very spiritual reality to music where we've played a lot of shows where you're playing your bass, I'm singing, and you're thinking like, is there going to be pizza backstage?
I got to do laundry later.
Like you have this, like your mind wanders and you're not really in the moment.
Oh, yeah.
But then we played so many shows where you look at the set list and you're in the music, you look down and you're like, oh shit, it's the last song. What happened? And you can't really remember it because it transcends time and space. And that aspect of music, that's magic. And that aspect of music is what keeps us coming back year after year. And because we could get real jobs, and we could, but we keep coming back year after year, even though the economy is not great, like the circumstances touring us not great, but that magic and that power, it means everything.
Yeah, it's very special when you get that. Like I try to tell people, I go, it really is addictive when you exactly you have those moments that like you're in sync with people, you're in sync with a room, you're in sync with strangers. That's the thing that people don't understand. Like when you got a connection with a room full of strangers and it feels like you're in a mirror, there's nothing like, you can't talk about, wow, this is really everybody vibing. That word vibe is like, okay, we're on the same wavelength. That's a real wavelength. You know what I mean?
And it's a real thing. Yeah.
Yeah. And they don't get, let me ask you, what year, when we met, obviously in the 90s, do you remember what year? I forget the year, 96, 98? It
was 1996.
That was early, because that was early for us.
Yeah.
Because I joined Madball when they became like more official, 94. Yeah. And I remember that tour was one of our first European tours. Like I did a Bruises tour, Turmoil tour, and then I think it was
the Refuse tour. Yeah.
Refuse, Kickback, Donuts, right?
No, Donuts were not on the tour, but Sarah from the Donuts
was hanging out.
So she was hanging out for that tour, and then I think Marauder and maybe you guys played with them later.
Yes, that's what it was. They were around. Yeah, that's what it was.
Yeah. But that tour was that was wild. So I thought about that a lot.
That was my next day. I was like, what do you remember from that tour? I remember a couple weird moments and stuff.
There was a lot of moments. But so to set the perspective, like we were touring in the States with Snapcase on that record we put out called Songs to Fan the Flames.
Yeah.
And our manager calls us up and he says, Madball or MAD wants you to do a tour with Madball, but it's like 4 days after this 5-week US tour. So I remember sitting in Salt Lake City having this band meeting about, okay, we're going to tour with Madball like the minute we land, basically. Like, for a day and then just go down, you like get in the van and drive down to Germany. And we decided that we wanted to because we were massive Madball fans. I don't know if you remember, but John, our guitar player, and David, they were in the pit almost every night.
Yeah, no, I remember.
Yeah. And it was interesting because we're from the north of Sweden. We're this like vegan straight edge anarchists.
Yeah.
And I mean, so this is like, this is pre-internet and everything. Yes. So coming and meeting you, we didn't know what to expect because we know like
stories.
Yes, we heard the stories,
of course.
Madball and DMS and everything. We're like, so we're quite nervous, I must say, about meeting up with you guys because we're like, what's going to happen? You're like, what if they don't like this?
I know. It's funny. I love hearing it because we always wonder because we're always like, I wonder what people thought. That's why I asked now. Fast forward. So I was always curious.
So I just remember a couple of things like. We're Swedish people, so we're a bit, we're always a bit standoffish at first. Like any Swede you meet, they'll be like, And then after a couple of days, like, oh, they're the friendliest people. But it's always like a couple of days to warm up.
Yeah.
So we're a bit standoffish. And I think you guys thought we were weird. And then we played soccer with you guys.
Yeah. And then you guys,
like, oh, you guys love soccer. We're like, oh, we love soccer. And then we bonded over that. And then from there on out, I think it was super cool. You were really friendly to us. I remember David fucked up his wrist or something. And you guys went to the pharmacy and bought him stuff. And like, you really nice to us. And it was like, you know, coming from our background, like the political punk background, there is a lot of prejudice about what you guys were representing.
Of course.
And we're like, okay, what does this mean, you know? And we were hanging out and you were super cool to us and you were super friendly and also very respectful, which I thought was really cool. I remember, I mean, this is the mid-90s. People said a lot of stuff on stage that we can't get away with saying now. Because
of course, people got to understand, you know, different times. It was like,
different times. And I remember I was a bit upset because, and maybe especially Kickback, there's a lot of like, you know, yo faggots, yo pussy. And I said something on stage about that. And I said, I don't think that's cool. Like we, you know, and Freddie was so cool about it. And he was like, oh, I'm going to stop saying that on stage. It's so cool. So I thought you guys were really respectful, and it was a fun tour. It was, I mean, for us, it was like, you know, hanging out with you guys.
Yeah, no, definitely. And what was cool is funny because, like in that, you guys also were the first kind of bands. Again, it was early tours for us. A first kind of band that we're touring with that maybe we're known for politics. We didn't even know, you know, we're Americans. We don't know politics. We know fucking McDonald's and fucking the Yankees. But, you know, we're like, okay, they're political. All right, that's their thing. All right, so how they'll be towards us. Because we've always been around, like in America at a show, there was always Communist Chris, White Power Willie. There was, you know, Black Power Bob. You know, there was always Straight Edge Sam. You know, there was always, you know who they were. So it wasn't like that weird for somebody to be like that. But we were like, wow, okay. You know, people talk about, but, you know, we didn't know much about you guys, but we just knew, oh, I heard of the band and you know, they got some political stuff and we're like, okay, whatever, you know, I don't care. You know, we're down to play, you know, and we've always been and the same shit we learned. I remember you guys early on and then early, the same thing. And I told you this when I saw you, because I didn't see you for many years. And then I started, you know, so I'm one of these guys, even though for like an older guy, I've always been a guy who likes knowing what's going on or trying to keep up. Anyway, let's see what's going on. What's the lay of the land? I'm always down when people try new shit and whatever. But then I remember, so we did the tour after you guys, and then fast forward, I'm starting seeing bands, and then I start seeing a lot of people that looked exactly like you guys. and the vibe was, what I loved was, I remember being like, the mashup, I mean, they may, who knows who they were. For me personally, the first people I saw were you guys that I was like, wow, they got a punk look, but they ain't playing punk. That's better than punk. Like, it's punk influence, but I'm like, that shit is really thought out. It's heavy. It was like real metallic. I go, that shit, you know, it ain't nothing like one chord shit, but you guys represent it like a punk hardcore band in every way, you know, and when instead of looking like a metal crossover, it was like a punk crossover that I wasn't used to seeing that, but I loved that whole, I was like, wow, this is crazy. You know, they're really punked out, but they fucking, because I'm not a big punk fan. I like some punk, but I was like, I like the attitude of punk. Yeah. And then I was like, you guys were real, all you guys could play. So I was like, all right, you know, that was another thing. And I was like, and then later on, I even told you that. I remember telling you, I said, yo, I seen a lot of people, they owe you guys credit. You know what I mean? But that's what I love. I think Sweden, what is it about Sweden you think that has that in the water with being open to musically, especially? Like, hey, let's fucking mix this with that and this and that.
I think there's a couple of things, not go too deep on that, but I think we have the communal music school where people go to music school for free. Yeah. We have a communal like practice space places where you can practice for free, which I still have one of those, like with my band. You practice for free, you know, and
amazing. You guys
have all of that, which allows the infrastructure to be really, you know, it's a good infrastructure for having a band. And I think Swedish people are really vain. So they're really like they pick the coolest things, and then they present it like
you guys look good. I had to say, you guys always look good. I was like, you guys were fly. I was like, I can't fit into that shirt or that bullet belt, but okay, they could rock it. I like that shit.
But I also think it's a vanity in music. Like Sweden is very hip to what's going on. And it's funny that tour we did with you, because that's when we looked our punkiest. That whole 95, 96, we really we looked like punks,
Yeah.
And it was interesting because I was really into the whole like Vermiform and Heart Attack and that like kind of like PC punk scene in the States. But we're playing this metal music and we're touring with Snapcase and Madball and we're on Victory Records. So that like the PC punk community, they did not like us.
Yeah,
and a lot of like the Victory Records people did not like us because we were too punky. So we were like in this weird like stuck in between these two worlds, and we're like, this is kind of annoying because in our minds we just want to play really aggressive music, really be on point and talk about the politics. And but I mean, as we learn, punk and hardcore has a tendency to be very it has a
say it because it's true. It's true.
There's a lot of rules to it, and I always found it amusing that hardcore is so one of the cornerstones of the hardcore identity is like, be true to yourself, but not that true. You can't be true like that. You have to be true like this. And it's just, for us it was a bit confusing because we came from the European perspective of like punk and hardcore in Europe was of course different than punk and hardcore in the States. So we had that thing going on, but at the end of the day, like I think that getting past the 90s and because how it was so much scene politics. It was all like you can't like Born Against if you like Sick of It All. But I was like, I love Sick of It All.
I know.
I love Born Against.
For sure. You know why I loved where our position was in that? Because we were usually the band. People would be like, they wouldn't ask us that. They would be like, wow, you like Madball? Or Madball cool with, because people would say that, wow, you were cool with Refused? You guys were cool with Earth Crisis? You guys, and we're like, if we're cool with anybody who's cool with us. Yeah. And if they don't, I was like, and if not, they may have, you're sure it's all right to have an opinion like this guy's, of course, because of stories. And if you don't know us, you could be like, I don't know them, but I think they'll kill me. Okay, fair enough to think that. But usually when you know us, you'd be like, no, they're great dudes. Yeah, but they'd probably kill us if they needed to. But that's really, no, but like usually, with everybody, we were always like now, we're glad to be, we always were glad and we always knew we were lucky to be doing what we were doing. Yeah. Yeah. So we may have never always lived in the moment, but we always knew what we had. Like, wow, we're lucky. Wow, we're in Europe. Me and Freddie, like, we grew up hanging out. The same thing, you come from a town in Sweden and you don't expect to be like, oh yeah, guess what? I'm gonna be doing I'm gonna be in LA to, playing this and be at the whiskey and then I'm gonna go eat a fucking veggie wrap or whatever. You don't think that. You think I'm gonna be in my small town or my own city. I'm gonna grow up and blah, blah, blah. And it's crazy how.
I think that goes both ways. It was funny because when we did that tour with Madball, there's so many of our friends like, oh, did you get along with Madball? How are those guys? And we're like, you're super nice. And as you said, like, we don't have to agree on everything political. I'm sure we agree on a lot of shit. Yeah. Some stuff we might not agree on, but of course, if we treat each other with respect and we know why we're doing what we're doing, it's fine. So, I mean, because I remember a lot of people were asking us like, oh, how can you tour with those guys? They're thugs. And we're like, oh, they're super nice. They got, and that's too, you can correct me if I'm wrong here, but it always felt like, you had some crew people around you that are pretty fucking tough. Yeah. Of course. I don't deny any of that, but yes. But the thing is, when you're touring together and you're all getting along, no one has to act tough, And my problem was always with people that acted tough because they were compensating for something different. Yeah. And I remember like one of the last nights of that tour, there was a brawl at a bar. And one of your crew guys got taken, into custody. And I remember Freddie screaming at a German police officer, screaming, "You don't know what hardcore is." I'm like, that's fucking, what the fuck is happening now? And so it's like, we're like, well, if they need to, shit's gonna go down. 99.9% of the time, it was super cool and it was super mellow.
Yeah. You know, what it was at that time, you know, like I also told people, I was like, yeah, you know, did we get into fights or something? Yeah, we were also 20-something-year-old kids, brand new, you know, sure, we grew up that. We were always cool, but definitely, you know, we were younger and we were like culture shock. People forget that. You taking us from the Lower East Side. Now you say, one day you're going to be in Germany, then you're going to be in Sweden, then you're going to be in France, and you're going to say, oh, and you're just going to blend in easy and get it. And we were like, you know, and on top of that, oh, we don't eat no McDonald's, you know, back then, you know, what you want us to eat, you know, from the farm? No, we, you know, it's all the, you know, but we grew. We grew up like Europe is literally our, I have my whole adult life has been in Europe. I've been, you know, touring there for 28 years. Yeah. You know what I mean?
It gives you a lot of perspective on life.
Yes.
I got to ask you one thing though, that I was being curious about. I had some friends that played in a band and they were huge dudes. I think it was kind of by accident, but also they embraced that image. They were just kind of like, yeah. But one of the things that I gather is like, because you guys are coming over to Europe, you have this reputation, it's like DMS crew and all that. Did a lot of people come looking for trouble with you guys? Because it feels like there's an attitude where like, well, they think they're the big guys. We're going to show them who's the big guys.
Our crowd, a lot of our crowd did, unfortunately. That's why every Madball show, there were fights. And it wasn't a lot of times our people, but it was, you know, because we let off the angry, which we did, because the angle is, you know, the aggressive side of what we're, you know, our message is obviously, you know, let's try to hit them, you know, the musically, hit them over the head, the thing. So obviously, and we are who we are. So it's like the Slayer crowd, you know, guys in Slayer are scared of their crowd because those guys really want to crucify people. You know, they want to go have drinks at the bar, but their crowd wants to burn the place down because, you know, they tend to kind of live at times 10 on your message or what they think your message is. So back in the day, did we have meatheads on the road with us? Yes, it happened. But a lot of times, for sure, it was the crowd. But, you know, I don't blame them. At the time, you know, it was Madball, it was a New York hardcore band. And at the time, you know, the vibe was more street. Not that we wanted to fight, but we definitely, the angle was more, we're trying to do this is the angry side of our message. Yeah. Kind of, you know.
Did people ever want to fight you guys?
Oh, not, you know, once in a blue. Like we've had situations, but I think the situations were always with people that didn't know us.
Oh yeah, like,
but I mean outside.
But there's always this attitude. It seemed like with the masculine identity, when you see someone tougher, you go, I'm going to prove that I'm the toughest guy.
Yeah. You know what it is? We've always showed respect also, and we've always demanded respect. So we've lucky that we have friends from the biker world to the underground world to police officers to judges, lawyers, which is beautiful. That's why I love being from the world we come from. I love us being open-minded to everything. And I love that, you know, because of music, we have people from all those spectrums that agree on one thing. And that's a music, a sound, which also goes into lifestyle, like it or not. So that criminal does have something in common with that judge somewhere down the line. And if that's the only thing in common, we good. One thing in common is saying, at least, look, we all the same in one way or another, at least in there. The rest is bullshit. And if we could do it through here, you know how it is, especially for people like us. Having friends around the globe are lifesavers. If we ever need, like we said, there's times we get sick, we need medicines, we need a ride, we're stuck somewhere. These are the things that happen. No matter how many records you sell, how many festivals you see us on, the big picture, we could get left at a truck stop. Believe that. You know, that we could get taken into some weird country and then try to extort us for money. We could get taken in for whatever reason because we're travelers. You know what I mean? People don't get it all the time, you know? It's crazy.
But then I mean, that community, because I mean, my life, I mean, you know, punk rock and hardcore really changed everything for me about who I am and my identity and how I saw myself. but a lot of times I've been playing music that's been more adjacent, but not really part of that scene. But that doesn't matter, because once you've been in that world, I mean, for me, it's like a perfect example of like Refused did our first show in Mexico City a couple of years ago, and I never been to Mexico City, and I was like, oh, it's a bit scary because
it's crazy. I know, I love Mexico, but it's different.
And then the guy hit me up, and he was like, I'm a huge fan of your bands. I'm a punk kid. You want me to show you around Mexico City? And I'm like, yeah, of course. So I hung out with him in Mexico City for 3 days, because that kind of community in that world building is like, you can reach out to someone and be like, do you want to hang out? And I'm like, yeah, of course we should hang out. And then he showed me in Mexico City. It was beautiful. And I mean, that is something a lot of other music scenes don't have. They don't have that connection where it's like, wherever you go, there's always a hardcore kid that's like, I know a good vegan restaurant.
Yeah, hell yeah. Or like that, you almost feel like you know him a little bit more personal when you connect on that level. Like I was just saying, like, people out there listening to this podcast, one, we know each other for many years as you're hearing this, but this popped up at the moment because somebody tagged us and said, yo, you should get Dennis on, because we have an old ticket from a tour we did. And somebody was like, yo, you should have Dennis on the show. I was like, hell yeah, I would love to. And we put Dennis on blast, and he was like, let's do it. But you see what I mean? It was like, if you're vocal out there, we make shit happen and we can. And I'm glad you were right away, like, let's do this. Because I was like, hell yeah. I was like, especially when I came out with the podcast, like I'm lucky that I got a lot of cool friends, and also people that know that what I'm doing, and they're sending people towards me, like cool people, like, hey, maybe you want to check them out, what up? But my whole thing was like, let me go through the people I know first, my friends and stuff. Yeah. So that's why it was cool. Even when you popped up, I was like, hell yeah. I was like, you kidding me? One of my first tours was with him. Yeah. And look, and I followed the band throughout the years. I've seen what you've been doing and stuff, and there's some cool shit. So I was like, boom. And when that kid asked, I said, let's make some kid fucking,
it's cool.
Yeah, let's make this kid also, let's show him how we get down, and boom, he asked for it, now he's gonna get it.
Yeah, it's perfect.
But cool shit. But what I was wondering, so I was like, so Refuse is going, when do you take the break and you start working on the other projects?
Well, I mean, it's usually, because I have so many projects, it's usually like a rotating cycle almost. It's like, I know there's going to be Refuse year of touring, and then I'll make sure my other bands are writing music, and then it kind of overlaps a little. It's been a bit weird now because 2020 was supposed to be the Refuse year. And so that got kind of canceled. And we already decided that 2021 was, and probably 2022 was going to be off years for us.
Not no more.
It's like, we're like, all right, what are we going to, so but then I'm lucky enough to have my other band Invasion is putting out a record, hopefully later this year. And I have this project with Brian Baker called Fake Names.
Oh, dope. Yeah. So what's that like? What's it like?
It sounds like, so the lineup is Brian Baker, Minor Threat,
of course,
Magnus, and then Michael Hampton that played in SOA, Faith, Embrace. He plays guitar, and Johnny Temple, who was in Girls Against Boys and Soulside, plays bass. And
so
on the latest recording, we got Brendan Canty from Fugazi playing drums.
Wow! So you're gonna have
it's me singing. For some reason, they were like, "Let's have the Swedish guy singing." We actually put out a record last year because we're not going to be a touring band, but we have a new EP coming out, and hopefully we can play some shows. And it sounds like old man punk rock.
Oh, good. Well, that's good. You got a good squad of people, because I could see even the punk rock you're going to get out of those guys is going to be interesting, because that's an interesting batch of people.
It's great, and it's one of those deals where like, and it is too, this world, talking about the hardcore world, because I grew up and I was into metal, and that world felt really like unattainable. It was like they're all rock stars, it's all groupies and limousines, and then when you discover punk and hardcore, like, I mean, I looked up all these bands. I discovered, New York hardcore was kind of one of, like, Crumbsuckers and AF and all that stuff was like the kind of like my gateway into punk and hardcore. And then when you get into this world, after a while, we're all peers.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because I remember, like, I got really into Sick of It All, and we traveled for like 14 hours on the train to see Sick of It All at a festival. I'm like, I love Sick of It All. And then a couple of years ago, Refused toured with Sick of It All.
Yeah.
And now they're just friends, you know, and it's just like, so this world, and the same thing, like Brian Baker, I've seen him around with Bad Religion. And I'm like, every time I see him, I'm like, oh shit, that's Brian Baker from Minor Threat and Dag Nasty. Like,
yeah.
And then one day we played Riot Fest a couple of years ago, and he just comes up to me, he's like, I have this new band, you want to sing? And I'm like, yeah. It could be anything. I'm like, I want to sing a new band, you know? So, but it's cool because when you're young, like, I mean, everything feels really far away, and everything feels really like, you know, I mean, for us too, I mean, I still live in the north of Sweden. Yeah. So when you're a young person, you're like New York.
I know,
New York,
far.
And you know all that. You're like, oh, that's so distant.
Yeah.
And then one day, these people are just your friends and your peers. And I don't think that happens in a lot of other worlds, because it's so like, it is a very communal thing. Yeah. And I mean, even though I would say Refuse, you know, we're trying to be this intellectual kind of you know, politically intellectual, I don't know what we're a pretentious type of band.
Yeah.
But I mean, when it comes down to it, it's like, you know, if you look, because I think, so here's the thing I'm going to tell you. Like, I think that once a lot of people got into hardcore and they love Madball and Agnostic Front and Sick of It All, and then they got into Radiohead and they're like, oh, my taste is matured. I cannot like this simpleton music anymore. But for me, it's always been like, if you really love music, there's no difference between like, I mean, I'm not saying you guys are simple, but it's like there's an immediateness and a directness to what you're doing. And there's no difference liking that or liking something super pretentious or artsy-fartsy. I mean, absolutely. If you're a true fan of music, you'll like everything. But if you're just like someone's like, your music is your identity, then you'll be like, well, I can only like this. And very true. You know, that's beneath me. But we've always been like, I mean, the Refuse guys, as I said, I mean, we're really into like avant-garde composers and songwriters. Yeah. And we got in the pit for Madball every night. Yeah. It was the same thing. It was just music. And
that's one thing we knew then. We knew as different from what we were, you guys were. We knew you guys were really into the music and loved our band and liked the music and weren't just like, oh, we got put on a hardcore tour. You know what I mean? We knew you guys were real. Oh, it was cool. You know, it was cool. The whole vibe, you know, you could tell when people are faking it or people are acting, especially when you're living with people, you know what I mean? And also throughout the years, how things unfold. And again, that's the era we came up in that I think we could, you know, there was more of that where you could be like, you know what? Yeah, I like the Meathead stuff. Yo, let me try this other stuff and it could still be okay. And then it became, no, you could only like one or the other.
Exactly. Yeah,
it definitely split up for sure.
Yeah, I never understood that. I always been like, if you love movies, you can like the lowbrowest comedy and action movie, but you can also like the Polish really dark stuff for sure. You love movies, and if you like music, I mean, different music has different sort of energies, or it has different purposes. Yeah, and I mean, you know, Madball and that style of New York hardcore, it's a music that's very, it has a purpose. And I mean, we talked about violence a little bit earlier, but there's something about like what you project is something really tribal and it's something really primal, basically. Yeah,
absolutely.
And that can be a beautiful thing because sometimes you just need to fucking, you know.
That's what I tell. It's funny. I tell people that, like, I meet random people. If I go to the gym or wherever I go, and they're like, "Oh, you're in a band? Yeah, what kind?" I go, "It's heavy music." I go, "Well, if you ever feel angry, you might like it, you know, because everybody feels angry. You know, maybe when I'm happy, I don't want to listen to freaking heavy music. I want to listen to like club music or something. You know what I mean? Yeah. And I'm like, but we all feel angry. We all feel, you know, there's music for everything. When we hear the Rocky theme, you get motivated. You know, music does that to you. I don't care. You're like, you hear Rocky, you want to, run up those stairs or whatever. Yeah. Totally. But let me ask you this. You said something before that made me, I was curious. you guys, because also you guys, one, you guys could play, one, you guys sound even, you know, and you ain't a metal band in no way, but you're very metallic and could hang sonically with whatever metal band. And in your area is known for those, you know, the death black metal or whatever you want to call it. How are those guys overall that scene with Refused? Because Refused is its own animal, and I don't know if I could see them hating, or you know, not even to start beef, but I was curious how you were taking, because even in the metal they did what you guys did, and for what you guys did in hardcore, like very technical. They kind of took their own angle, a little bit more art, very more artsy, even with the visuals and stuff. So with you guys, was there a little bit of a clash with the styles?
I think in the 90s, I think it was because the 90s was so scene oriented. It was so like we were the hardcore bands, and so the metal bands were like, oh, you know, fuck those guys, fuck the hardcore kids. But I think Sweden is such a small country, and as time progressed, and I think, I mean, the Shape of Punk to Come record that we did, it transcended a lot what hardcore was. Yeah. So I think a lot of metal kids were just like, oh wow, these guys are actually, there's some real riffage here, you know? Yeah. And I think since we came back in 2012, I mean, we're friends with all those metal bands now. We know all those, like, you know, At the Gates or In Flames and Sugar. Like, oh, they're just people that we know because Sweden's a small country. And I think the disconnect that was in the 90s is not really there anymore. Because as we talked about, like, once you grow up out of the identity that I can only like this, and then you just start appreciating music. I think a lot of metalheads saw our music and are like, oh, these guys are pretty heavy. That, you know, it's technical, it's really cool. We can get behind this. Maybe they're not. I mean, the flamboyant singer with the communist manifestos, they're a bit weirded out by that, but that's fine.
Oh, you mean, no, you're like the Mick Jagger for us. You're our Mick Jagger. You know that, right?
Thank you.
Hell yeah! When I saw, I was like, oh, that's like our Mick Jagger right there.
It's funny. I'll tell you a story, because then when we started Refused, I mean, we were really into like Sick of It All and like that you know, Agnostic Fun, like, and also, I mean, Youth of Today and Gorilla Biscuits, but of course, really like, I would say masculine music.
Yeah, real meathead. You were a meathead, you could say it.
But that's the thing. I wasn't, and I remember I took my shirt off and I had like one small tattoo on my back, and I was trying to be tough. And then I kind of saw myself from the outside. I'm like, I'm this scrawny, like effeminate guy from the north of Sweden. I'm not from New York, you know, I'm not from Brooklyn. I like put my fucking shirt back on, and you know, like, I think that when you're young, you know, we saw that and we're like, oh, that's really cool. But then you gotta kind of hone in on who you are. Yeah, of course. And I wasn't a tough guy. I wasn't like one of these, like, you know, I didn't have a lot of muscles. I didn't like to fight. So I was like, I'll use what I have and try to hone that into like my own personality. Yeah. And then, I mean, I got really into like, I mean, I actually around the tour we did with you guys, because I still had weird stage moves. But after that, I got really into like Northern Soul and the mod thing, and I got into the Suits, and I really like James Brown. I was trying to be like the James Brown, Mick Jagger of hardcore, because I felt that much more defined me as a performer than, you know, Lou from Sick of It All. Or But I mean, those guys are great, and I love what they're doing, but that's not who I am.
That's not you, And let me tell you, when I saw you the other stuff, nothing seemed out of pocket, because even, you know, it's different than Refused or what, you know, but it didn't seem like, oh, he's doing that now. Not at all, because even then, to me, Refused was crazy. Like, oh, you can't put your finger on them, you know, because now that became a style to not be able to put your finger on something. But back then, you guys were that. You know, you don't know they sonically how they look. You know, it's art, it's tough, it's me, it's all that. You know, so it was like, so I wasn't surprised even to go on what you did, and even what happened, what you guys went on later. I was surprised in a different way. Was like, oh shit! But I wasn't surprised that they picked your type of band. And what I'm talking about, what bugged me out was when I was like, boom, Refused at Coachella. Now, you gotta understand this. Now in America, like, all right, first of all, I just know about Coachella because of, real pop culture. That's like, whatever. But I love pop culture too. I'm always watching where fucking Snoop is at or whoever. I'm always curious. But then they're like, so I knew you guys would always pop up, and then I started seeing you guys pop up, and it was Refuse seemed stronger than ever, and I was like, oh shit, wow, these guys they got blasted with oxygen. They're people are in love with them again. Yo, shit, all right, we're seeing something special happen. It's that don't happen. No. That later, and that with that much oomph, and and all that stuff, and then I'm like, boom, they're playing Coachella. And I go, holy shit.
It was
now, but let me just start with this. First of all, did you know about Coachella before you got the offer? Or did you hear about it? You've heard about it, or?
Yeah, I was lucky enough with Noise Conspiracy. We played Coachella twice. So I was
okay.
Yeah, so I was, but I mean, I would say the other guys, I mean, it's interesting because Refuse broke up for a long time, and the other guys just stopped touring. They just stopped playing. Like David, our drummer, did some solo records, and he played like.
He better never had quit. That motherfucker is one of the baddest drummers out there. Yeah. I would break his hands if he quit.
No, he's not.
So
he did quit for a couple of years, and he didn't play drums, and he played guitar and sang. And so when we got the offer, I mean, we had the offer from Coachella a couple of times, and we always turned it down. And then we got it, and all of a sudden, we all lived in the same city. We're all like, 2012 was a year where we didn't have anything booked. So we're like, well, maybe you should do it. And it became this big thing. Because I mean, when we broke up in 1998, we were touring the States with Frodus, playing in coffee shops, record stores in front of 50 to 150 people. And we broke up. And then the record sort of just did something. It's this weird thing when we broke up. I saw Noise Conspiracy. I'm at home and people start calling me, and they're showing you a video on MTV, like fucking Kirk Hammett is talking about Refuse. And I'm just like, what's going on? So the myth of Refuse and that record just kind of grew. It was weird because it was like, we're standing over here, and then Refuse, that's something over there. It just fucking took off.
Yeah, so great record also. I mean, great, definitely, it's not like, oh, why? It's just when. Way later, and it's and then to the extent how that happened way later, because again, when you see, even with Noise Conspiracy, even I didn't even know you were on that, but I could see that. Refuse to me was like, no, there's a hardcore band playing Coachella. Like, I know where they toured. We've played 100 squats with them. You know what I mean? Like, we ate a squat. Yeah, we've ate out of squat bowls, pasta squat bowls, and all. Like, but I'm saying, like, to us, I'm like, oh shit. And I'm like, and for just people in our scene, I was like, like, boom, that means, the sky, the ceiling just went up more.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
but it was so interesting because it was funny. But I mean, that last record we did before we broke up, I mean, it became a record that it meant a lot for a lot of people. And it did transcend whatever zine or genre that you had. But it was so interesting because we broke up in a basement. We played a basement show when we broke up, and the next show is Coachella, basically. We did like a couple of small warm-up shows. But so the journey from like playing in front of like 80 people in a basement in Harrisburg, Virginia, to play Coachella in front of like 15,000 people. I mean, so when we got back together and we started practicing, we were like, well, we have to approach this music quite differently because we're not going to play the squats in the basement. We're going to play huge rock shows. And that was, like that, to juggle that and to be like, okay, how do we make this music? Because the music that we play, it's so much about aggression and violence and confrontation. It's so like visceral. And like, how do you transform that into playing Coachella? I think we did a great job because we spent a lot of time doing it. But it's interesting because all those bands like you guys or Snapcase and all those bands we toured with in the 90s, I mean, it's weird to us because no one's like, oh, Coachella's not, knocking down your door saying like, when's Madball coming to Coachella? No, they're not.
No, they think we're going to be coming through their windows. That's why.
Exactly, yeah. So for us, it's so weird that we became that band that just boom, and it was something completely different. I mean, in a lot of ways, like the way we view ourselves when we look at ourselves. I mean, yes, we're kind of a big rock band, but we're still a hardcore band. We're still from those roots. I mean, that's kind of how we approach the music. But yeah, that was trippy. It was wild, and we played.
That was fucking. We were blown away, and that was talking generally. Yo, Coachella, because I really Coachella, get out of here. I seen clips from it, and it looked great, and I was like, yo. That's dope that they could go there and still have a great show, because sure, you could get on the bill and then it could be a lame show. But I was like, no, it made good noise. There was good hype afterwards, you know, and I was like, that's a plus because, you know, again, you always been verbal about your background and bands you came up with. And again, it keeps the music alive, you know? And then when I heard you guys played, I wasn't there no more, but we weren't around that, or we would have rolled up. But you played in New York, the one club, you played a couple nights, and I was like, yo, they're fucking killing it in New York. These motherfuckers. I was like, I haven't heard from them in years, and now they're back. I go, they're really back.
We played Terminal 5 2 nights in a row.
Insane.
We had Lou come up and do Sick Roll songs with us.
Let me just tell you about the Terminal 2 nights. Let me tell you, people can't just do that.
No.
People don't just do it. New York rappers that you see cannot just go and do that. Let me just tell you. So it's more than like just selling it ain't about even selling 1 million records, because that don't mean shit either. You know how that is. Playing live and people wanting to come to your shows is two different animals. You know what I mean? And I heard about that. That's great. New York. How was that?
It was fucking fantastic. But it's interesting too, because the psychology of music is like, so we broke up and for 14 years we didn't do anything. So when we got back together, it was like, I mean, the hype surrounding our return was pretty insane. Yeah. So we came out and we did all these, I mean, we did a bunch of festivals. And so 2012 was this year that we like to call the victory lap. Like, you know, we did that year, and I mean, Tournament 5 2 nights in a row. And then we put out a new record, and then we're not playing Tournament 5 anymore.
Yeah. Not to Coachella 2024.
Yeah. But you know what I mean? Because it's like the myth and the idea of something is usually more powerful. Because I mean, when we decided that we were going to continue, we're the type of people that like, we need to put out new music. We can't just be one of those acts that just like, you know, a nostalgia act. We need to put out new music. And the minute you do that, it definitely levels the playing field a lot, because it's like the myth and the mystique surrounding the band. That's what got people to come out and see us play the first time.
Let's keep it mystical a little longer.
Yeah. We couldn't. I mean, we just wanted to play and create. So we were like, well, we have to put out a new record. It probably won't be great success because of the last record, but then we'll do another record. You know, so it's like
play the game.
It is interesting how that changes the dynamic and how people view you. Because if we would have continued to tour as this like, let's play Shape of Punk to Come act, I'm sure we could do it really well just doing that, but we're not those type of people. Like, you want to play new songs, you want to create, you want to evolve, you want to, you know, that's just.
And especially people don't understand when these bands are babies. You want to see them grow, and they keep growing. You don't want to stunt their growth, you know, and be like, oh no, let's just. I just love my kid when he was 12 years old. Yeah, I don't want him to get, you know, when he's 18, you know, right? That's what it's like. We just like your kid when he was 12. We don't want to see how your kid grows up.
But that's exactly what it's like. A lot of people are just like, they don't want you to grow up. I mean, it's funny because a lot of times I think about when we were touring in the 90s, and as you said, we were kids. Like, we were young and quite immature, and we didn't know how to handle with the interpersonal relationships and shit like that. And I look at that, I'm like, it's really unfair that now when we're older and we're, you know, like, we're a bit more mature, we can communicate. It's never going to be that same thing again. And, you know, like the old saying, like, youth is wasted on the young. I'm like, hey, it kind of is, you know, because when you're young, you fuck up a lot. When you're young, that's when bands break up. That's, you know, like, and now it's like, it's so much easier to stay focused. It's so much easier to stay on target.
Yeah.
Also, I think because the band is not everything that you do. Like, you have your life, and the band is a very important part of that, but it's not everything. And when you're young, it was everything.
It was everything. You know what it is? Like, not that it ain't like music and that's life for us, but when real life outside of music, like, a death or something very serious, then you realize you're like, oh, okay, you know what? Like, you start separate, you grow out of it, you start learning, yo, this is more important than not being able to go to every show that's in my town. Like, you know, you missed that one show, you start learning, yo, this is more important. Like, yo, maybe I should have been there to take care of my grandmother. You know, now she passed, I wasn't there. You start learning, I'm not going to do that, and start focusing on your family. You know, it's growing up. We had to grow up on the road, and the same thing with, you know, so it's crazy because we're still involved with the youth, you know, doing this. So we get to grow and we get to see where we fucked up, you know, like, oh, I get it. I see it all the time with kids. And I'm like, yo, trust me. I don't want to be a dad, but trust me, I'm doing what you're doing. Or I know how it could be, or like, you know, it's
hindsight's so easy. Or it's like you can look back and you're like, oh man, I was horrible.
Yeah.
I was horrible at that time. Or you can be, I mean, because I think that a lot of what kills band is ego. Yeah. Because I mean, you write this song and then they don't want to play that song or some bullshit like that, and then you're like, oh, then I want to do I'm gonna do solo band because fuck you guys. And I think especially for me, I worked a lot with that. Just being in a bunch of different bands, and to hone in on what's the best thing for the band. And if I put something out there and someone says, yeah, I think we can do it like this instead, I'm really like, oh yeah, that's great, let's do it like that. Because you know that too, like you need to trust the people you play with. If you don't trust the people you're in the band with, it's really hard to have a band with people, you know. Absolutely.
Yeah. I learned that. It took me a couple years because I was a control freak. But then you realize it's like, all right, that's me. But it took me time to realize, oh, I'm not letting them be them. Like what we just talked about earlier. You know, I'm stopping people from being themselves. And I'm like, wait a minute, I got these guys to play with me because I like how they play. And now I'm not telling them, I'm telling them how to play. Like, it took me many years to get it, but I got it. And then I learned to now the way I see things is like, for instance, with the band, okay, I look at it as special forces. Everybody knows their own, you know, their job. All right, you're the Air Force, Marines, whatever. We all know we're all specialists at our job. The mission is to win this record. This battle is a record or whatever. I'm not going to tell you how to do this, how to fly your plane, how to ride your boats. You're the best at that. Do it, but let's get the mission accomplished. I learned to do that, you know, maybe 7 albums in, but I learned, you know, I'm saying,
better late than never. Better late than never.
Better late than never. But I get it though. I understand it. Again, I grew up and I got to learn and like, you know, point things out to myself. I'm like, oh shit, you know, because you know, we grow up in front of people, and also like with people, like exactly. We talk about one of the last times we were actually in a room together. Besides for 5 minutes, we were fucking half our age. You know what I mean? You know, living again, eating out of pots and pans. Who knows what we were eating out of some of these fucking clubs and shit.
But it is interesting because it's like your whole life and all the relationships you have, they are on display in the music that we created.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like you can look at a specific record and be like, oh man, that guy was in the band. Oh, wow.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. Or even that, like I said, like, oh, I already know. When they say Refuse, I'll say, oh yeah, Refuse, Kickback, it was that tour. It was Refuse. Refuse was like this at the time. They were from here. This was our first time touring with a band. You know, I know it's real time, you know. And then later on, we toured so much since then. Now it gets confused. But those you remember because those were our first handful of tours for everybody. And it was with all the new bands that were, you know, happening at the time. You know what I mean? Yeah. You guys were a new band that was happening. We were a new band that was happening. Whoever you know, Kickback was a new band that was happening. Whatever festivals we played at the time were hip, you know, new and stuff. You know, the scene in Europe was, I mean, still amazing, but it was great at that time. It was like so much variety. Look at that tour. Madball, Refuse, Kickback, you know. Do
you remember
even today it's like chock full of variety.
Yeah. Do you remember when we played the Fuck Reading Festival?
Yes, absolutely. And I tell this story a lot because I said, let me tell you, I give Refused a lot of credit because Dennis took a lot that day. Yeah. From fucking scum punk rock motherfuckers. So everybody, we're gonna recap. I'm glad you brought that up because I always bring it up and I didn't have it brought up for this. I had other things I figured I got into, but I always bring that up because one, for both of us, it was a classic show we got to play.
Yeah.
In a classic venue. So we got to play Fuck Reading Festival at what was the name of that club?
Brixton Academy.
Brixton Academy.
Yeah.
Classic club. You know, a Fuck Reading where every punk band, GBH, Peter and the Test Tube Babies, the Anti-Nowhere League, Refuse, Sick of It All, GBH, Madball. I remember I said, I smoke, but smoke only, weed only affects the short term, not the long term. You should know this. But so obviously, you know, out of all those bands, you know, Refuse, Madball, Sick of It, we're the hipper bands.
Yeah.
You know, we're the new. So Refuse goes up, and then the punk rockers, but you guys it was still a good show, but the punk rockers do as the punk rockers do. And I just start seeing stuff flying, lungies flying, cans flying. And me and Freddie on the side, we were about to jump in the crowd.
Yeah.
Before you guys, because we were like getting like, and you were like, just like, fuck it. Like, yo, I'm just kind of like, it's what, you know, whatever. And I remember you just banged out your set. Like you took it. And then I was like, oh shit. Me and Freddie looked at each other. We're like, get ready. We're going to jump in this crowd and we're going to get ready to fucking get it in. What do you remember of that show?
I mean, exactly that. It was like, we went on.
Insane.
And we play this, you know, like this, as you said, the new type of hardcore. There's a lot of punks screaming like, you fucking wankers.
And it was scum punks. Let's get that shit. Like the scum. When we showed up, it was 10 in the morning. They were already passed out in the gutter in the back. I was like, wow, this is like real English punk shit. Like, right? I was like, it's like a picture.
Very English, yeah.
Very English.
It was rough. They threw a lot of beer at us. I think the beer, they had like plastic cups, so it wasn't that bad. But it was tough.
And I remember because this was the weird thing. Like, you guys were still having a good show. It wasn't like, but it was the scumbags in the front. They were talking shit and throwing shit. But so it was like, well, yeah, they're still having kind of a good show, but these punks are doing this scumbag shit. And I'm like, those ain't the punks that have been coming to our shows this whole time. I'm like, you know, that's a whole different type of animal. Yeah. And I remember just me and Freddie, like, during that, you know, I don't remember what happened. I remember you came over and I was like, they took it like troopers. And I could tell you held it good, but I could tell, I was like, he ain't too happy about that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but it's interesting because for me, it's always been like, when you play those shows and there's like an amount of resistance to what you're doing, that's when I go fucking crazy.
Yeah. And you did. I remember.
You know, it is like
I get it.
You see people looking at you like, who the fuck is this guy? Like, oh, you don't know who the fuck I am.
Yeah.
I'm gonna show you.
I get you. You're like, hey, motherfucker. I get it. Yeah. No, I totally get it. Yeah.
And I get really amped. I still to this day when we play shows with any of my bands, where I see people are indifferent or they're like, oh, fuck these guys. That's when I go off. That's when I'm like, I'm gonna show you shit you've never seen before. And I remember that attitude. Like, there's a couple of shows where we play with you guys where we're just like, because I mean, you know, Mark at MAD, he was like, this whole speech is like, it's the next level for you guys. It's going to be awesome. But then, I mean, the Refuse crowd and the Madball crowd at that point wasn't really the same crowd. Yeah. So a lot of your crowd, like big, burly skinheads, they were not interested in us. So we had a lot of nights where we're like amping ourselves up because like we have to prove to your crowd that, you know, we're worthy. So it was a lot of that. And I still love that feeling. Like,
that's because you're a hardcore kid. That's the difference. That's where it comes out where other guys are like, oh, I want to get off the stage because they don't like what I'm giving them, so I'm not going to get it. You're like, yeah, motherfucker, watch. I'm going to get in your face. That's what a hardcore does. Yes. Yell it. I'm going to bash it over your head, you know, and make you like it. You know what I mean? That's the difference. But it's funny. No, go ahead.
But it's a funny thing, too, because it's like you have that spot. And I mean, as you said, a lot of people, like, I've seen so many bands where, like, someone threw a beer and they're like, the show's over.
Yeah.
And for us, it's like, well, we have this fucking loud wall of speakers. We have this space. I mean, it's going to take a lot to stop us.
Yeah, And
I mean, we always had that attitude where he's like, resistance is good. Because I like music that projects that, you're almost antagonistic towards your crowd. There's something quite exciting about that, you know, like that push and pull when you're like, because I mean, a lot of those shows, I mean, when we played with you guys, we played with other bands, we did the Snapkiss tour. In the first couple of songs, people are like, who the fuck are these guys? And by the end of the set, they want one more song.
Yeah.
And I love that. Like when you can push the momentum.
Yes. And what I like about that, like you guys, again, were known for, like, again, you had a very, your political stance were very verbal. So it was good that you weren't going to be shy. You had to kind of be loud about it, be a little crazy, because you had to kind of back it. So you had to be like, you know, you got to act crazy, not act, but you got to be like, look at it. You know, I'm putting this out there so you can put it out two ways, timidly, or I'm aware of the shit.
Yep.
And, you know, that's what you guys did. Because I always, you know, from day one, I always know all these guys, they have their message, they have their political, that's what they're about. And they do, and they that's what they're, you know, whatever. Hey, and they live how they live. So I was like, hey, good. You know, they talk it how they walk it, you know, and I'm like, even if it is different from me, I'm like, wow, I'm with them. I live with them. You know what I mean? Like when they're off stage, they are, you know, whatever, you know, talking with, doing what they're doing. The same thing with us, you know, like, we were swinging on trees like gorillas do, you know?
Yeah, it's funny because we played a lot of shows where before the show, I can feel quite intimidated by the vibe of the room.
Yeah.
And I'm not, I mean, you know, I'm not like the bravest person in the world, but when I get the microphone in my hand, I'm completely fearless.
Yeah.
To almost stupidity, you know, like I'm always stupidly fearless, but there's something about what we talked about earlier, the power of music. If that fulfills you, you're just like, all right, this is my spot, man. And I mean, I think to this day, like whenever I play a show, I want to prove that this spot that I have here, that I'm worthy of this spot.
Yeah.
So you grab the microphone or you grab the bass and you're like,
own it.
This is, I need to own this. You know, I need to deserve this. And I think that's a beautiful thing. I mean, it is funny. We're all getting older, you know, we don't jump as high as we used to, and
it hurts.
You know, you got to preserve your energy a bit more than you used to, but everybody still wants to bring it. Everybody still wants to bring it at the shows, and I think that's pretty fantastic.
Yeah, we're if anything, we're more focused on bringing it now. Yeah, when you're younger, you want to bring it, but now we're like strategic about it because we're like, yeah, but not just because we have to physically be strategic about it, but also because we love it that much that we never want to not do it a disservice. You know, everything about it. Like that's what I tell people. It's like, it's so crazy when you live this so long, how it's like really becomes, it's more than your face. You worry about it more than your face. I don't give a fuck about this. You could put scars on it, but don't put a scar on the mark on my band, on some shit that I worked hard for, and I feel we don't deserve that. We should be, you know, don't do that. I don't give a fuck about this one. But my band, I'm like, that's my insides in that. You know, now you know, the outside is whatever. It's the inside. Now you got a problem with my insides. Now there's a problem. Now you don't like me.
But I think that's great. I think because, as you said, like as we grow older, we have to be a bit more strategic. Because I remember in the 90s, I saw so many bands that came up on stage and they went ballistic for 2 songs. And then they gassed out. And now it's like someone like me or someone like Freddie, we have to be like, okay, I got an hour. I got to pace myself. You know, I got to be able to sprint in the last couple of songs.
Yes, seasoned. It's called being seasoned.
Exactly.
Exactly. That's why, exactly. The young guys, we sit back, the old guys, we look, we go, all right, watch him blow his load. Okay. He'll be done in a minute. And then the stallions, the old stallions come and we stroll along and, you know, nice. But no, that's what happens. It's true. It's crazy growing up, and then, you know, growing up in music. It's so weird because it's like, we go through the normal growth of regular people, but it's different because we're in bands. So we see it. It's different because we go through it. Like our timeline, we could kind of follow our lives through a timeline, you know, from our bands to exactly pictures from this album to that album to that album, who we were with, what we were doing, what we were listening to, like how we looked. And then, you know, interviews. Wow, this is what I said then, now. And you're like, whoa, I said that? Like, what? Like, you know, like, fuck. And it's like, you know, we're documented, like it or not, you know, whatever we've done, it's in the books.
I'm very happy that we didn't have social media in the 90s.
Oh yeah, thank God. Hold up. For you and for us, especially in that tour, we both would be fucking shot.
Yes.
Like, people would hate us even more for whatever they hate us already. But that's the great thing, what made it great. And I think that's what kind of made it, people have to meet each other and figure it out for themselves more. Because we only heard maybe rumors through people about each other, but we didn't have to fucking see pages and pages of shit and then go, oh no, they must be real because there's 500 threads on this. Yeah. We did that, and then we would meet each other and have to feel each other out. Now you go online and there's gonna get 500 people giving their recap on Dennis. How's Dennis when you meet him? There's gonna be 500 people commenting on that.
Yeah.
Now it's different. Back then you kind of had to live. And not just research.
Yeah, you had to sift through the rumors, and then you met people, and then you had to figure out, like, do we get along? And I mean, most of the time we got along.
Us with you guys, us with Earth Crisis, us with so many people. People were like, really? Madball with these? I'm like, yeah, why not? I'm like, if you're an asshole, yeah, I don't want to be your friend. Are you cool? Yeah, I want to be cool. So I was like, but yeah, I got some friends that are assholes too, but that's another story. For real, I'm glad I was able to catch you on this because, especially like I said, if it wasn't for homeboy freaking linking it, it wouldn't have popped in my head at this time. And I'm glad because you're part of my timeline and my tour history. That's what I wanted to do, especially that tour to this day. People always talk about the Refused Kickback tour, That's like a legendary tour.
It is funny because a lot of people, some people don't know, but then when I say, we toured with Madball. Yeah. And everyone's reactions was like, what? I'm like, yeah, exactly. 96.
Exactly. And back then, and we can say it was still in the 96, it's like got some oomph to it. Not like, 2001 is a while ago, but 96.
Yeah, 96. And I mean, the lineup you had was pretty fucking awesome as well.
Yeah.
You had a great lineup on that.
Yeah, tour. It was a great time.
And Matt played guitar.
Yeah, it was a great time for everybody. It was great in general. I had so many pictures, but I had a flood and everything went to shit. So, but there's a couple I hear floating around. So let's see I find some new ones. But listen, I'm glad you're fucking to catch you on it. I hope to catch you somewhere. Yeah. We need to do that Refuse, Madball, or whatever the hell you're doing tour. We're gonna do something once these borders open up and let everybody know in Sweden we coming. But one love, good to talk to you. I'll let you know when it comes out. I'll text you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And have a great one.
Hell yeah. Be safe, Dennis.
Talk to you soon, buddy. Bye-bye.
Peace.